Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We got a big show set for you guys tonight, talking about all things Clemson football, talking about recruiting. We'll talk about our latest recruit, our first recruit for July. But before I bring on Jordan and we get into tonight's show, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. We're trying to grow this channel. Also, if you're in the live chat right now, I see we got 10 people in there. Please go ahead and hit that like button for us. Helps us out on the live videos, gets it out to more people, brings more people in so that we can communicate in the comments section and chop it up with you guys about all things college football. Also, if you want to support the show, the Voice of College Football has merch. Go check it out. See if you like anything. If you do, go ahead and grab it. If not, we appreciate you being here anyway. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring on my co-host, my buddy, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing great, man. Just glad to be back.
Yeah, man.
I really missed you. I missed you guys in the comment section. 2 weeks is a long time without doing the show.
You should have seen them last week, man. They were running around the comment section, burning things down, just being like, "Oh my God, where did Jordan Bowman go?" They blamed it all on me, and I told them I didn't do anything. But no, I'm just kidding. We miss you too, man. I'm glad you got to spend some time with family. And do your thing, but it is awesome to have you back on the show for sure.
Glad to be back.
We got 14 people in the comment section already tonight. Thank you guys for getting in here. We hope you guys had an amazing 4th of July. I know I did. I went and saw the USA Baseball Collegiate National Team play the Chinese Taipei, which is the Taiwan national team, on the 4th of July. It was pretty cool. We hit like a walk-off shot to win the game. Not a home run, but just a walk-off hit that brought in 2 runs, and we won the game in the very last inning. It actually only went 7 innings because we had an hour-long rain delay in the middle of the game. But it was a pretty cool 4th of July. It was a cool way to spend it. I had a good time. How was your 4th, Jordan? How'd you spend your 4th of July?
Awesome, man. Had a little cookout at my pop's place. We grilled chicken, barbecue chicken, hot dogs, burgers, watched the fireworks. Had a lot of family over, so it was nice, man. I always enjoyed the holidays, so felt good.
Awesome. Yeah. 4th of July is always that good holiday, get some barbecue in, watch some fireworks, hang out with family and friends. It's always a good time. Usually crazy hot, at least where I live, and I know where you live as well. So it was a scorcher, man. I thought I was going to die in those baseball stands on Tuesday for a minute there until the sun went down. But let's go ahead and get a shout out to the chat section. Appreciate all you guys being in here. We got 15 people in here right now. We got John Sarian in here. Thanks for getting in here, man. One of our regulars. Ben Adams. Will, the Notre Dame man, is in here. Thanks for getting in here, man. Showing some love to the Clemson channel. Says, hey guys, did you see Uncle Lou's Clemson preview? Had you guys going 9-3 with losses to Duke, FSU, and the Gamecocks. He had a good point in saying that Dabo better have you guys ready. I have not watched that video yet. I will go watch it at some point in time, but I didn't even know that he posted that yet. 9-3. I definitely don't agree with that. I don't agree with us losing those 3 games. But that's just my opinion. I'm a biased Clemson fan with orange-colored shades over here. But I could see his point about being ready week 1. That's gonna be an important game. It's definitely not a gimme kicking off with an ACC game for the first game of the season. Speaking of that, by the way, Jordan, did you know we are only 60 days out from the kickoff of college football season for the Clemson Tigers.
60 days too long. That's
60
all I
days
know.
too long, but we're down to 2 months. We've broke into the 2-month range. We got fall camp coming up in August. We got tons of recruiting to pay attention to and keep us busy in the meantime. So I can't wait for it, man. Pat Bateman's in here. Byron Davis, Steele Gamble. Thank you guys all for getting into the chat. We hope you guys had a great day, and we appreciate you showing up for the show tonight. But yeah, man, I've had a super busy day. I know you have as well, but it's always good to get on here on our weekly spot here Thursday and talk a little Clemson football.
Absolutely. And hey, it's always good, when we're doing the show after a commit. Is that like 3 weeks in a row now?
Yes, I think so. Because the last show you were on, we were talking about Mayo. And then last week's show, we talked about
Ricardo Jones.
Yep, we talked about Ricardo Jones. And this show, we get to talk about Ronan O'Connell. So pretty amazing, man. It's good for our show to always have a new commit to talk about and kind of center the show around. And then, of course, talk about all the guys that have yet to commit. We got a lot of dudes that have set hard commitment dates that Clemson is still in the game for. So we'll get into all of that here shortly. But before we do, just a quick overview. I know we've done it on the channel in the past couple weeks, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But our June recruiting month, the month of June for Clemson, I think they won on the recruiting trail, man. We had an amazing month, kicked off with Sammy Brown, and then it ended with Ricardo Jones, man. We couldn't have asked for a better month of recruiting for Clemson football. We are currently ranked at number 11 in the country as far as recruiting. We got 5 2-stars, 4 or 9 4-stars, and then 3 3-stars. But the one thing that I did find interesting when I was doing some research for the show tonight is our player average, our overall average recruit. That puts us at 6th in the country behind OSU, Alabama, UGA, Florida, and Southern Cal. And that's a 91.6 for an average recruit rating. We got 14 commits so far. So that could even go up even further with some of the recruits that we still have on the board. So, I mean, just the quality that Clemson has recruited so far in this recruiting class, I think is pretty special.
Absolutely. I mean, and I always pay attention to the player average because, especially when you're looking at 24/7 sports, because there's a lot of what goes into the rankings, especially this early in the cycle, is, if you have a lot of volume, you're going to be really high up on the commit list, whether you have a bunch of 3-stars, a bunch of 4, or, some 3-stars mixed in, a 4-star, so always looking at that player average really gets you a good idea of what teams are bringing in the best players. And Clemson being 6th on that list is a big deal. I think last year they were right at 90, and so now they're like 91.6. So definitely a step up in average quality for so far for the commits in this class. I think that's a big deal. You're bringing in higher caliber players like Sammy Brown, Bryant Wesco, Christian Bentoncourt, guys that are tops at their position. I mean, right. Sammy Brown and Brian Wesco are top 10 players nationally by 24/7 Sports. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal for sure. And I always pay attention to those. And a lot of other recruiting analysts, are really pay attention to it as well, because it really gives you a good idea of what kind of recruits each of these teams are bringing in. So, yeah.
It's just it's a really quick snapshot of kind of the quality of the class, and Clemson's truly killing it along the recruiting trail for the 2024 class. So speaking of 2024 recruits, we got our boy Ronan O'Connell. The first domino finally fell in the form of an offensive lineman Ronan O'Connell out of Franklin, Tennessee, 6'4.5", 290 pounds, super athletic dude. Really finishes blocks. This guy's special. He's ranked, according to 247 Sports, ranked 595 overall player, right? 43rd at his position and 17th in the state of Tennessee. So this is a big commitment for the Tigers. I know some Clemson fans out there have been talking a lot about, man, when are we going to get an offensive line to commit? When's it going to happen? Some people started to get a little worried, but as always, it tends to work itself out. These guys just decided to commit a little bit later than, say the three offensive linemen that we landed last year in the recruiting cycle, right? Those guys kind of committed in June, and then I think our last one was on July 4th. So these guys just held out a little bit longer. We finally get our first commit on July 4th in the form of Ronan O'Connell. Tell us a little bit about our boy Ronan O'Connell.
Yeah, I mean, when you turn on the tape for Ronan O'Connell, the first thing that jumps off the page is kind of just the physicality he plays with. He's a very, very big body. He plays tackle for his high school, but he has the versatility, the length, and probably projects to play guard at the collegiate level. But he kind of reminds me a lot of what Walker Parks was. Just really nasty, kind of a tweener as far as his build. So he can play tackle, he can play guard. But Ronan is very, very physical, and he has that mean streak that you want in a guard. Well, really any offensive lineman, and that's kind of the kinds of players that Clemson is recruiting now. I mean, you go back to last cycle with guys like Ian Reed and Harris Sewell, just big physical guys that play with the kind of physicality that that they want to move people off the line. And so his tape is really impressive. His ranking may not jump off the page, but I think this was a much needed get, for Clemson. And I could definitely see him, getting a bump in the rankings later down the road. But he has the size. He's going to grow into his body even more than he has, especially when if you get him up to 300, 310. I think it would be a really good playing weight for him, and he's going to be. I think he's going to be a guy that can be a multi-year starter down the road. So this is a really big commitment for Clemson, and it was a recruitment that kind of felt like it was going the other direction for the longest. I mean, Tennessee was considered the lead for most of his recruitment, and within the last week, that definitely kind of shifted, and Clemson stayed on him. And they were rewarded yesterday or 2 days ago. So this is a fantastic commitment. First domino to fall for Clemson as far as the offensive line is concerned, and it's a big one because he feels the kind of need, body type wise and physicality wise for Clemson. So really excited for Ronan.
Yeah, absolutely, man. He is. So I was watching the tape of him yesterday, just kind of some of his 2022 highlights from his season in high school, and you can see they use him a lot. They pull him. They're using him a lot in the pole game, and this dude finishes blocks, man. That's one of the things that definitely jumped out on the tape for me is he is not afraid to block through the play, through the whistle, and take dudes to the ground, right? And then you see his athleticism for being such a big guy. He moves really well in space. He's really good at getting to the second level. I watched one highlight of him. He was probably 30, 40 yards down the field. Running back broke a big play, and he's the reason that it got into the end zone because he made a block, 30 yards down the field that prevented one of those secondary guys from making the tackle and, sprung the running back the rest of the way. So when you see his aggressiveness, kind of his nasty streak that you talk about, and his willingness to just put his head down and finish blocks and put guys on the ground, that's super exciting to see. And his willingness to just get down the field. He's not that offensive lineman that just blocks 5-6 yards down the field, running back breaks a big play, and then he's like, oh, okay, he's got it. No, he's down there, running with the running back, trying to get a last-second block to make it a touchdown. And then you see him in pass pro, and the tape that I watched, you really saw that he was good at getting the defenders' hands off of him, and really pushing them down to the ground, and giving the quarterback a clean pocket, and even taking those dudes to the ground a lot of times as well. So, I mean, this dude just he's a super versatile guy. I think really athletic, and 6'4.5", 290. Once he gets into the Clemson's strength and conditioning program, I'm sure he's going to put on even more size and be more physical, and hopefully still keep a lot of his athleticism as well. Can be a really versatile offensive lineman for the Tigers.
Absolutely. And to your point, I mean, with how much he pulls, and that's the kind of offensive lineman that Clemson needs right now. He's physical, and he moves really well. Because Garrett Riley's system, I mean, he loves counter, and so Clemson is going to be a counter-heavy team. You'll see it a lot this year. These are the kind of offensive linemen that Clemson definitely needs. I mean, they're physical, but they also can move laterally and kind of get to the second level, and that's a really big deal. So again, this is a fantastic and a really under the radar, probably will go under the radar commitment for Clemson in this signing class. And we got more offensive line dominoes to fall that could also contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. He is kind of under the radar because, according to 247, he's only a 3-star, right? But you think about, I think Rivals had him at a 4-star. They're the only recruiting agency that actually had him at a 4-star. But, I mean, you think about some of the teams that are recruiting this guy, in a Wisconsin, traditionally they produce a lot of good offensive linemen that translate to the NFL, right? So you beat out teams like Tennessee and Wisconsin for a guy like this. I don't think it's as flashy as a signing as landing some other guys would be. But I think it's a super quality signing, and definitely after looking at his tape, man, I'm excited to see him develop at Clemson and play for the Tigers, man. He's going to be a dude, man. He's got his mean streak is something to watch. I can't wait to see that when he's wearing that Paul on the side of his helmet.
Absolutely. John Sarangisson says O'Connell plays with anger and plays through to the whistle. Absolutely. He's a psychopath, really.
He is, man.
When you watch his tape, he's
an animal out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you see him get a hold of some of these defensive backs and these linebackers, and man, he's just tossing these dudes like they're rag dolls, man. I saw one time, I think it was a safety blitz, and this dude just he stuck out one arm, and that dude just went flying the other way. And it's just like, man, that dude, he's definitely going to be I think he's going to be a special player for the Tigers, man. I'm super excited that we landed him, and I don't think it could be understated or overstated what it means to finally have that first offensive line commit, right? That first one of the 2024 class. And, speaking of offensive line commits, we got a couple coming up real soon with some hard recruit dates. You did have a guy in Michael Uni commit to UGA, I think last Friday. So that's a moot point for Clemson. He's off the board. He decided to go to UGA. That's a guy that we brought in June. But then you got a guy this Friday. He's going to commit in William Satterwhite, right? 6'4.5", 300 pounds. He's going to commit tomorrow. I'm not sure. I don't know if you have a time on it, but I'm not exactly sure what time he's going to commit, but he is going to commit tomorrow.
I believe it's 2 p.m. I think the tentative time was 2 or 3 p.m.
2 p.m. Okay.
So,
and he's a guy that I think Clemson's been in good shape with for a long time. He's a guy that spoke highly of Clemson coming out of the June visit. Really liked what he saw. But a lot of the stuff that I've been reading on, the various recruiting websites gives you reason to pause, because Tennessee did get the last visit for him. So Does that make him lean Tennessee? I don't know. A lot of the people out there are saying that he's a slight Tennessee lean, but it's still really up in the air between Clemson and Tennessee. So it looks to be coming down to the wire. I don't know that anybody has an exact read on what he's going to do. I'm sure some crystal balls will come out probably tomorrow morning, or maybe later tonight on him. That'll probably sway it. At least give us an inkling of which way he's going to go. Probably before that 2 p.m. commitment time.
Absolutely. And listen, William Satterwhite would be a fantastic get. He's another guy that Clemson is kind of, they've been recruiting him to that he could play guard or tackle. He has that build. He plays tackle in high school, probably will play more guard, at the collegiate level and beyond. But he would be another really, really big get for Clemson if they were able to land his commitment. So just one to keep an eye on. I definitely don't have a read on it, but it does seem like it's a very tight battle. And I do know that, it's kind of been back and forth, at least for the past few weeks. He's, Clemson and Tennessee have definitely been going at it, and they've both led for him at multiple points in this recruitment. So we'll see who wins out. Tomorrow will be interesting.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see who he goes with. We'll all be watching. I'm sure, I'll figure out at some point in time where he commits to. But I hope he chooses the Tigers. But if not, moving on to the next guy, I think we got a better chance, at least a better outlook with the next guy. The next commitment date is going to be Fletcher Westphal, right? 6'8.5", 335 pounds. This dude massive human being. This dude has set his commitment date for Monday. And he is actually, according to 247 Sports, crystal ball to Clemson. So it looks like Clemson is most likely going to land Fletcher Westphal unless something crazy happens this weekend. But I kind of expect for that to be our second offensive lineman to commit for the 2024 class.
Yeah, definitely is in the cards are in Clemson's deck right now, as far as Fletcher Westphal is concerned. And this would be a awesome get. Obviously, massive human being at offensive tackle. He's had his recruitment has been really interesting. For the most part, it was hard to kind of get a read on where he was leaning. His family was took more of an analytical, gather information type of approach to how they went about taking their visits and asking questions and stuff. He was he never gave a whole lot of tells, and he didn't really give a whole lot of indicators about where he was leaning for a lot of his recruitment. But I think that, I really like how his family did it. They were about business. And they evaluated each school they were visiting. Clemson's in it. Obviously, Arkansas and Florida are the main schools he's deciding between. And they did their due diligence, in taking all those visits. Yeah. And they just kind of getting information about each program and what would suit Fletcher the best. So, and it's definitely seeming like Clemson is going to be the one to win out in that respect. So. But again, still time. He commits on Monday, but definitely like where Clemson sits right now, leading up to that date.
Yeah, you gotta like where we sit with him, man. It's always encouraging when you start getting crystal balls for guys, and just the sheer size of that dude, man. That's insane. And then imagine when he gets to Clemson in the strength and conditioning program, man. And John Sarian says Westphal could be Peter Wood's match on the other side. Yeah, that'd be a fun matchup to watch. Those two go at it for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully we land that guy. And then there's a couple more offensive linemen out there as well that we haven't talked about yet. 6'4.5", 290-pound Casey Poe. I think we're kind of out on him as far as I know. He seems to be an Alabama lean. He's going to commit next Wednesday. Correct?
I believe that's right. I
Yeah,
honestly forgot
yeah, he's going to
because I
commit
don't.
next Wednesday, but he's probably going to go to Alabama. They seem like they got that pretty wrapped up, but I just thought I'd mention him just because he's a guy we've been talking about for the past couple months since the June, or for the past month, I guess, since the June visit. But
And to be frank, he was my favorite. He was my favorite target on the board. So I'm a little hurt. We're not.
yeah,
This is probably not going to end up in Clemson's favor. But
yeah, I mean,
I if you come away with if you were to come away with O'Connell, Satterwhite, and Fletcher Westfall, I think that's a damn good offensive line
yeah,
class.
you can't be upset about that at all.
Even if you don't get Satterwhite tomorrow, I think if you land with Westfall and maybe you
Yeah,
expand the board and take a third, um, still a solid class. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of this offensive line class in general, so I'm not going to be sweating it too much. I
yeah,
don't think there's a whole lot of separation from the top guys in this class and sort of the middle. So I think there's a lot of good quality guys that are lower ranked that have every bit as much upside as some of the guys that are ranked higher. So
yeah.
um,
And I mean, look, you're we already got Ronan O'Connell, right, which is a really good get. We already talked about him. You get Fletcher Westfall, you're sitting pretty good. The number for Clemson for this recruiting class for offensive line is 3. So yeah, maybe you have to expand the board. Maybe they use the all-in cookout to maybe get some new guys on campus and make some new offers along the offensive line. But I don't think there's no reason to panic. Or be really worried. Maybe if you miss out on both those dudes, maybe then there's
that would be disappointing.
you're like, okay, where are we going to pivot now as far as offensive line recruits? Because you got the last one I think that came to the June 2nd visit is Jamison Riggs, and I can't really find anything on that dude. He's not set a commitment date. I think it's going to be sometime in July, but where he's leaning, I don't know.
I
I don't
I
think it's
tend to think
Clemson.
Georgia Tech.
Yeah,
Um, Clemson was in on him early. There was kind of a cooling on that relationship a while back. They tried to kick the tires again. Didn't really. It wasn't very fruitful. I don't. I definitely don't expect him to be an option at this point. But if he's another guy that's been kind of hard to read. But I tend to lean Georgia Tech. There seems to be some. He wants to major in engineering, so that would make a lot of sense.
yeah.
So
Georgia Tech would be a good school for that for sure.
yeah.
Uh,
Although Clemson's got a pretty good engineering program in its own right, but it's Georgia Tech.
yeah, I mean, it's the nerds over there, so you know.
Definitely don't blame him for that decision.
No, definitely not. But I don't see us landing him at all. What the heck was that?
You good? Did I lose you?
No, I'm here. You can hear me?
Okay. Yep. You're good.
I had something loud blast in my headphones. I don't know if you heard it or not, but
No, I heard nothing. So hopefully that means
all right. Hopefully that means the chat didn't hear
either.
Good Lord. I about went deaf there for about 5 seconds. But yeah, so that kind of rounds out the outlook on the offensive line for the month of July. We are in a dead period right now. So I think the all-in cookout will be the last weekend of July.
July 29th.
And then we'll head into another dead period heading into August. So if we do end up expanding the board for offensive linemen, that would be kind of our last opportunity before we get into fall camp and the season when it comes to recruiting. Not by any means stop recruiting, or if we don't get guys in on the all-in cookout, does it mean we're not recruiting anymore? It just means they're going to be guys that are going to visit during the season for games probably. So we'll see kind of how that goes. I think that'll be mainly based off of how tomorrow goes and then Monday. And then we'll kind of really know where we stand. Maybe we don't need to expand the board at all because we hit our number that is 3. Maybe we get Satterwhite and Westfall, or maybe we just get 1. I think if we get 1, we're in good shape. But moving on down, we have I a quick mention of Cam Coleman. He's off the board now. So I know we've talked a lot about over the past month about how Clemson hit their number for receivers. But you heard some talk out there and the possibility that they would be willing to oversign in the wide receiver room for either a Cam Coleman or a Mike Matthews. Well, Cam Coleman's off the board now. He was kind of expected to take his recruiting into the fall, but it didn't work out that way. He committed to Texas A&M, so we don't need to worry about that anymore. But we still got a guy out there that we could sign as an athlete in Mike Matthews. I still don't think he has a date set, although he says it's going to be in July, at some point in time in July. But then he also says that he's going to keep the door open for more visits. So maybe that means it extends into the fall. But it could be sometime in July. It could extend into the fall. What's kind of your read on Mike Matthews? Because I know a lot of Clemson fans are paying attention to Mike Matthews. We really want him a part of this class. So what kind of read do you have on his recruitment right now?
My read is no read right now.
Like everybody else. Cool.
Yeah, here's the thing. Mike Matthews, throughout his recruitment has kept things really close to the vest. He's left a lot of things open-ended, for sure. He's definitely, coming out of his Tennessee visit, there seems to be a lot of sentiment that they seem to be the slight leader. I do know that Clemson still feels really optimistic about, their chances. And USC is definitely in the conversation as well, and I've heard at different points. So it's a recruitment that really seems kind of fluid. It's where Tennessee feels confident about where they stand. Clemson still feels good about where they stand. USC feels like they have a shot as well, and it's going to come down to whether or not he decides to really make that commitment in late July, or possibly push his recruitment into the season. I know Alabama was trying to get him in on an official visit, and during the season, and kind of delay his commitment. So he said he's not entirely sure whether he's going to do that or not. So there's a lot of variables in the air. But if he sets that commitment date, we'll see where it goes from there. But definitely still think Clemson has a shot. It's just going to be it's just kind of a who knows right now. Only Mike knows really how he wants this to play out. So
yeah,
going to be interesting. He would be just a cherry on top to an already great wide receiver haul, and just it would be nice to kind of get one over on Tennessee. I'm sure with a lot of the chatter that's gone back and forth between the two programs and fan bases over the past 6-7 months. So yeah, we'll just have to see how it goes. That's a recruitment that I'm just kind of sitting back with my popcorn and hoping it goes the Tigers' way, because no really telling right now.
If it goes our way, that would be super exciting. Not gonna lie, that would definitely be, as you say, the cherry on top for the wide receiver haul this class. Not that it's not already impressive. Wait, look, I am more than happy with the wide receivers that we got in this class, and if we don't get Mike Matthews, it's not the end of the world. He's kind of a nice to have, but we have our wide receivers that we needed to get in this class already. So it's not the end of the world if we don't get him, but I really hope we still get him. So we can just keep hoping. Hopefully he shuts it down in July and picks the Tigers. If not, then we'll move on. It'll be okay, and continue with the other recruits. So that kind of rounds out the last receivers on the board for the Clemson Tigers. Now let's talk about the safety position. So a guy that has been pegged to go to Clemson for a very long time. Some people thought that he would be committed a long time ago to the Tigers, and that's Corian Gibson, right? 6 foot, 170. He's visited Clemson, TCU, Ohio State, Texas, all in the month of June. So he's definitely done his due diligence and visits. He has set a commitment date finally for July 22nd. Um, he's been a Clemson lean for a really long time, at least as far as I can gather. What's kind of your read on Corey and Gibson? Are the Tigers going to finally land him, even though some would say they saw him signing with Clemson or committing to Clemson, I should say, probably a couple months ago?
Yeah, Corey Gibson, obviously, really intriguing prospect, top 100 kid, has plays both corner and safety. Clemson, it kind of likes him more at corner, but he definitely has the versatility to play both. His recruitment definitely, after coming out of the official visit, Clemson definitely felt positive about where they stood. That he did make it clear to them that he wasn't he wasn't going to commit during the official visit weekend at the beginning of June, and he did want to take his visits, and because of that, there was always the lingering presence of the hometown school in Texas.
Yep.
And he went through TCU and Ohio State. Ohio State that was thought to be a threat, but Clemson kind of got out of the clear on that one. And it's definitely a Texas Clemson battle right now. But coming out of that Texas official visit, there a lot of returns came. Good returns for Texas came out of that visit. A lot of crystal balls, a few big time commitments, and listen, Corey Gibson, he has a lot of people in his corner that want him at Texas. He does like Texas a lot. His family was down there for the official visit weekend. His birthday was that Sunday. And Texas is they put their best foot forward. So it seems to be kind of up in the air right now. I do think it's a good sign that he didn't commit and hasn't committed, since that official visit. And for obviously, it's a good sign he didn't commit. But it's a good sign there wasn't really a flurry of predictions to come in for him. Definitely seems like things are still up in the air. I know Clemson still feels good about where they are. But it's going to be tough. If I had to guess, it's probably a 50-50, maybe 51-49 type of recruitment. I definitely could see it going either way because I think he really does like what Clemson has to offer. And there's people in his corner that like what Clemson has to offer, but there's also a lot of pull and a lot of influences in Texas. His best friend committed to them last week, I think, or one of his good friends at least. And so there's a lot of influences pulling in both directions, but he has his commitment date set. We'll just see who wins out in the end. But right now, I'd call it probably a coin flip. Yeah,
as you say, I feel like certainly both sides have done all they can do in this recruitment. They both had their official visits. It's obviously going to come down to a Clemson and a Texas battle. You talk about all the hometown ties and the pull that kind of has for Texas. But, he really is a guy that kind of fits Clemson's culture, right? He's kind of prototypical guy that Dabo Swinney likes to sign, a guy that would fit in at Clemson very well and I think be very happy. But, again, you got family members and friends pulling you towards Texas. So, yeah, I could see it being a coin flip. I'm glad that there's finally a commitment date. I think 247 has him as a Clemson lean, and then I think On3 has him as a Texas lean. So the recruiting agencies don't even have a solid lead on exactly where he's going to go when it comes down to those two schools. So hopefully we grab him. It would be a really good get for, the Clemson class, but, yet to be seen. We'll see on the 22nd. And then we got another cornerback, making a decision on July 15th. And that's Ashton Hampton, 6'2", 190-pound, long cornerback, right? He is currently crystal balled by 247 to Clemson. So what do you think about Ashton Hampton?
Yeah, a really underrated recruitment. I really like this kid a lot. Tape really, jumps off the film. I think he's a guy that could definitely be a fast riser. A guy with a lot of connections to Clemson and a long-standing relationship to Clemson. His dad played with Mike Reed back in Germany, back during their playing days. So he's known and been around Clemson for a really long time. It was, Florida State was kind of the main player, main threat in sort of his recruitment. They wanted to get him in and kind of extend his recruitment into the season and maybe get him in possibly in December. But it's clear, obviously, setting a commitment date now in this month definitely is a good sign. I definitely think Clemson has been the leader, and I feel really good about where they stand. I don't think this affects really what this doesn't affect like Corey and Gibson in any way. They both are guys that have positional versatility, play both corner and safety. So I think really just the only thing Corey and Gibson would affect is kind of what position he plays. I think if Corey and Gibson were to pick Clemson, I think Hampton would end up being a safety and Gibson being a corner. But if Gibson goes elsewhere, Texas, I do think that Hampton could definitely be that second corner to go along with Tavoy Fegan. So, but neither one affects the other. It's not going to really affect the numbers for either position. So they're both takes. If Clemson can get both of them, they will take both of them.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I like where the Tigers sit right now, sitting 9 days away from his commitment. Definitely don't think that he hasn't really visited anywhere else.
Yeah.
So I think that should tell you all you really need to know.
Yeah, I think we're definitely a lock to get Hampton. Hopefully we can get Gibson as well. And, that kind of locks up that portion of the recruiting cycle for us. And we land two guys that we really want. I think the last guy I got on my list is KJ Bolden. And what's your outlook on him? I think we're out on him.
Yeah, didn't even make the top 5, surprisingly.
Yep.
Released his top 5.
Took us out.
Yeah, earlier this week, has a top 5 of Florida. I don't even want to do it off the top of my head, but Florida State, Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. I think I did that right. Wow.
You did. Yeah, you nailed it. Good job.
And Clemson didn't make the cut. Little surprised about that. Never felt really good about where Clemson stood. I do remember a little soundbite. Well, not soundbite, but a little tidbit that during his official visit weekend, his dad said that he was, kind of close and considering to committing, but obviously decided to take his visits. Definitely was pulled in other directions, liked other places better, and Clemson is definitely out of that one. But hey, I didn't feel great about that one. I always felt Clemson was at least they were at best behind Georgia and Ohio State for most of that commitment, most of that recruitment. But we'll see how it goes. He's been trending heavily. He's been predicted to Georgia in the past, but there's also been a lot of smoke for Ohio State, and he's kind of been trending there as well. So we'll kind of see. It's don't really have a good read on where he ends up, but I feel pretty confident it won't be Clemson at this point.
Yeah, definitely not going to be Clemson. Like you, I'm a little. I figured we'd at least make the top 5, but apparently not. I thought we'd be in there until the end. At least our name would be in there. Regardless of how good our chances were. But again, there's nothing guaranteed in recruiting. It's constantly shifting. That's why we can, spend so much time on recruiting on the show every single week. And it seems like there's always new stuff to talk about, always new storylines, and things are always evolving and different things are coming out. But I mean, we got our first guy in July. So starting off much like the month of June did for us, and hopefully we continue that snowball effect and we pick up a couple offensive linemen and some other guys as well.
Absolutely.
You had John Sarian's comment up there?
Oh, but I didn't even realize I clicked all of it. John Sarian gets in and says, predicting where kids commit is getting even tougher the way Some teams pay to play once they get desperate, like the way Texas A&M all of a sudden picked up the Alabama wide receiver without really a long courtship. I get the first part. Yeah, definitely. There's definitely some of that going on. I will say with the Cam Coleman commitment, yeah, there was a lot of smoke to Auburn, a lot of trend. It was trending to Auburn, but Texas A&M definitely was in his recruitment for a really long time. I believe they were his first offer before he was even ranked. So I wouldn't say there wasn't a long courtship there. There was definitely a previous relationship, but it was surprising to Auburn and their staff. Obviously their writers were surprised as well. So there was definitely an element of surprise there, and it definitely makes you speculate and all that. But it's always it's definitely tougher nowadays in the NIL era to really get a read on where some of these kids are leaning, and but yeah, that's just kind of the reality we're in.
Yeah, that's just that's kind of how it goes, man. That's kind of how it goes. Michael Foster says, didn't UGA QB recruit transfer to Bolden's High School? Yes, he did.
Dylan Raiola. Yep, he did transfer to Buford. So,
because he was going to transfer in state, and then he was going to have to sit out for I think part of the season. So he was like, I'm just going to bounce over to Georgia early, and enrolled in a high school there. So Buford.
Yeah, well, and Georgia's trying to build those relationships at Buford. A lot of those kids have spurned Georgia in the past and gone elsewhere. So definitely don't think this was completely unintentional by Kirby and the staff as well, or maybe they didn't push him. Not I don't want to say push him because he was going to transfer anyway. But kind of suggested it's like, hey, you might as well transfer to a school where we don't have the best relationship with, and kind of help us rebuild those. And there's certainly some guys that we want to get out of that school, like KJ Bolden.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. But as always, man, it's a great time to be a Clemson Tiger, man. Our recruiting is alive and well. 2024 class is shaping up to be one of the special ones. They're all pretty special, but that one's certainly shaping up to be something special, definitely because of the month of June. And then if it keeps trending that way, we're gonna be sitting pretty good at the end of this class when it's time to actually put pen to paper and sign your letter of intent.
I will address this question by Jacob Vargasco. Excuse me if I'm butchering that last name.
Houston. Yep.
Yeah. How are you feeling about Edric Houston? Yeah. Not great. I wouldn't say I feel great. Definitely been a lot of smoke to Ohio State. He's been several crystal balls. He really did enjoy his Ohio State visit, and knowing his recruitment and kind of his background, he's been an Ohio State fan for a long time. He said that was his dream school. But hey, if there's some possible way that Ohio State's also in it for another big time edge rusher and Dylan Stewart, maybe who knows? If I doubt that would scare him off or anything like that, but definitely think that Ohio State is in the driver's seat for that one. But if he doesn't pick Ohio State for some reason, I do think that's obviously favorable for Clemson, because I definitely think he did really like what Clemson was selling him as far as their plan for him in the defense. But
I think he's also a guy we could get back to Clemson for the All-In Cookout prior to his commitment date of August 22nd as well. So
absolutely.
I definitely think if he committed today, it would be Ohio State. But I don't think we're completely out of it for Houston. If we can get him back on campus during the All-In Cookout, maybe we sway him a little bit. I don't know, but they're definitely going to keep recruiting him heavily until the decision is made for sure.
Absolutely. Happy to see that U of FC lost to Dillon. Well, we don't know that yet, but I do think it's trending in Ohio State's direction. But there still seems to be some sentiment on South Carolina's side that they are very much in it. So haven't followed that recruitment very closely, so I'm not going to say whether he picks them or not. But it does seem that Ohio State is in the driver's seat in that one as well. Ohio State's doing some recruiting, man, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they need it. But Larry Johnson has kind of dusted off the recruiting chops. He's kind of been sitting there collecting dust. He hasn't really been producing on the defensive line like he used to. But he's pulling in some big time recruits.
This recruiting class is different for them. So
yeah,
for sure, especially if they land Houston. I mean, has there been any talk of Houston coming to the cookout? I don't think there's a list of guys that are invited or talked about.
Yeah, no, there doesn't. Yeah, that isn't going to come out for a little bit. That's kind of something that the staff is still working on and kind of feeling out. And again, it's a dead period right now, so you're not really contacting recruits really all that much. So, but
and then the other thing, they got to hash out, what the all-in cookout's going to look like this year. Last year it was, we've talked about it on the show before. It was kind of just a way to get the class together before the season kicked off in the fall, right? Recruiting class was pretty much wrapped up, right? This year might be a little bit different. I'm sure he'll get an invite. Whether he'll come, that's yet to be seen.
Absolutely.
I hate OSU. Yeah, we all do. We all hate OSU.
Shout out to Mark. Will gets in and says, Larry Johnson has kicked Notre Dame's butt for years, and it continued with Justin Scott. Yeah, I mean, Larry Johnson's is arguably the most respected D-line coach in the business. Been doing it a really long time. He's produced at a really high level. You have to wonder how long he chooses to stay at Ohio State, and he's definitely not a spring chicken anymore, but he's still got it for sure. I am interested to see how Ohio State's defensive line actually performs on the field, because I feel like there's been a pretty significant drop off in recent years as far as the production on the line. They've had some talented guys, but they haven't really gotten the production that you would expect out of them. A guy like JT Tuimoloau, I never get it right on the first time. Showed some promise last year, looking to see if he kind of takes that next step in his development. Really highly touted freshman. They got him at the basically the very last minute. So we'll see how that plays out.
Michael Foster says, who else is the staff looking for for defensive end? Solomon Williams, I believe. They're still recruiting Solomon Williams. I think he plans to visit sometime during the season. I don't know if they have him locked in for a certain date or a certain game that he's going to come to.
Not yet.
But he's definitely a guy that Clemson's still recruiting at the edge position.
Yeah, but they are. But I think the fact that no new offers are really coming out at defensive ends, kind of tells you that Clemson still thinks they can kick the tires and keep pushing for Edric Houston. He hasn't committed yet; it's not over. So I don't expect Clemson to really think about expanding the board too much until he commits. But I believe they're only trying to take two anyway. Two defensive ends, and they already have Darian Mayo in the class. So, Solomon Williams definitely is probably the number one option if Edric Houston commits elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
Jacob comes back in and says, Jeff Scott back? Haven't seen anything official about his job. No, he is not. He is not back with Clemson in any official capacity right now.
Will you see him at a game this season? Probably. Yeah. Will you see him around Clemson? Yeah. He's definitely got relationships with all the coaching staff, relationships with a ton of people in Clemson. He was at Clemson forever. So he's got a ton of relationships there. But in any sort of official capacity, no. We didn't sign TJ and Wesco because of Jeff Scott. I saw somebody post that online probably a couple weeks ago now. But oh yeah, see Jeff Scott comes back and we start landing receivers. Like no, he's not back. He's not with the football program.
He's living life right now.
Yeah, he's chilling, man. He's getting paid from South Florida. He's taking a year off. I mean, if you were still getting a paycheck like that, I know I would take time.
I ain't working.
I'm not working for nobody, dude.
No,
I am not working for nobody. Look, as long as
catch my ass on the lake.
Yeah, I'm gonna be out there on the boat. Maybe a fishing pole. I'm gonna be chilling, dude. Go to a couple games.
My buddy has a pontoon, so I'm just kind of
there you go,
out
man.
on the water.
Yeah, go out on the water, get some tubing in.
Oh yeah.
Some wakeboarding, all that fun stuff.
I've never gone wakeboarding. I got to do that. That's on my bucket list.
Yeah, man, it's fun. It's fun. You got to try it. Good time. But yeah, no, he's not back. Will he be in the future? I'm sure. I'm sure he'll find his way back onto the Clemson staff at some point. I would guess, unless he's got his eyes set on something else. Maybe he wants to, go coach high school or something like that. Who knows what his future plans are? But I wouldn't be surprised to see him back with Clemson at some point in time.
Isaac Smith gets in and says, "Who do you all think is the most underrated commit for the 24 class?"
That's a good question.
That is a good question. Most underrated? I'm going to go TJ Moore.
TJ Moore.
Yeah. And I know that's kind of weird to say because he's a top 100 receiver, but I legitimately think he's a 5-star type talent. I think the combination of size, speed, route running. I saw somebody on Twitter or something say he was slow. I'm like, he was clocked in at like 22 miles an hour.
Slow.
During one of his games. The kid is not slow. I still think the rankings, especially if you look at the composite, 24/7 has him pretty high, but I think on some of the other recruiting sites, I don't think they've caught up to him quite yet. I mean, Rivals has him as the 52nd best receiver in the country. Still a 4-star, but the 52nd best receiver in the country. There is not 51 wide receivers better than TJ Moore in the country. There's just not. So I still think the recruiting sites are still kind of slow. They're slowly starting to catch up on how good he is, but he was he started out pretty low ranked. He was like a 3-star, this time last year. And he's kind of slowly built his stock as he's, been to more camps and they really gotten eyes on him. But I think he's elite. And so I still think he's being slighted on some sites for sure. So I'm going TJ Moore.
I would say our newest recruit, Ronan O'Connell. Just looking at some of the scouting reports on him and some of the, what I feel is kind of disrespect as far as kind of how he's ranked by some of the recruiting sites. He's not really getting a whole lot of love. He's a 3-star guy. Some of them don't even have scouting reports on him, which is crazy to me. Absolutely insane. But I'm telling you, just go turn on the tape of Ronan O'Connell. That dude is for real. He is a monster on the field, and he is not afraid to be very physical. And then his ability to pull in his athleticism, talked about it earlier in the show. I think he's got a potential to be really special for Clemson, and I think he is super underrated. Nobody, when Clemson signed Ronan O'Connell as the first offensive lineman in this class, nobody throughout the country was like, "Oh man, look who they got!" Right?
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, he gets in the program, he develops. He's going to be a long-time starter for Clemson.
I also want to give a shout out to our technically our lowest rated commit in the class, Nolan Hauser. That's my kicker, my number one kicker. and of course, as I say that, John Sarian pops in the chat and says John Hauser is underrated. But yeah,
there you go.
No, I agree. He's a 5-star kicker for sure. Just a absolute cannon for a leg.
Kickers can't get no love, man.
No, they never will. I mean, it is what it is. You're never going to see a kicker be more than a 3-star, but he's. I wouldn't want to have anybody else in this class. Yeah, and he's been a phenomenal recruiter for this class as well. So
there you go, man. Been putting in work for the Tigers, man.
Yeah, that's my kicker. So Nolan, if you ever watch this,
yeah,
you my dog.
That's right. Come hang out with us, Nolan.
Absolutely.
Come hang out with us. We'll have you on the show if you want to. Not that if you ever see it, hit us up.
Yeah, I might just slide in those DMs.
Hey man, just slide in. Hey, what's up, man? You want to come talk about it? That'd be pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but consider me a huge Nolan Hauser fan for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
All right.
We'll transition and kind of talk about a little bit more, moving forward, a more immediate this season specifically.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's talk about, heading into fall camp. Clemson's got, a couple question marks on the team, a couple things they're going to have to work out in fall camp. Specifically, first thing that comes to mind for me is the offensive line, right? We do have 4 returning starters, but we are replacing that left tackle position. And I think that's going to be pretty important. It seems to be if you got a guy like Tristan Lee step up and fill that position, and he can really solidify himself there. It seems like our other 4 dudes will just fall into place and start at the positions they were going to start at. But I think, as far as offensive line goes, man, I think we're in a good position, but we're going to have to get settled. And something that we've seen in the past for Clemson on the offensive line is, kind of talking about the musical chairs that we've played, sometimes due to injury, sometimes due to, guys just not fitting quite right. So I think it's really important for fall camp for us to solidify those 5 guys and build that continuity. That way that Cade is comfortable in the pocket. He can sit back there. He can make his decisions, and he can really exploit the defense. So looking forward, man, I think that is going to be super interesting heading into fall camp, and we'll see what the reports are coming out of fall camp as well.
Absolutely. It just kind of comes down to that left tackle, but there's a lot of optimism, at least for me, as far as where the offensive line is. I think it got a bad rep last year. A lot more than it deserved, but I genuinely think last year's offensive line was, for the most part, pretty good. At least, I think the starting 5 of with J Mac in and relatively healthy, I thought they were a really good offensive line, especially run in the run game. I think there was a stat that I saw by David Hale over at ESPN. Clemson, I believe they had their runs stuffed or at or behind the line of scrimmage only 13.5% of the time, which led all non-triple option service academy schools in the country. Wow. So, I mean, the Clemson's offensive line, especially as a run blocking unit, was really damn good.
Yeah,
and I don't think it got a lot of credit for that, but it was a really good run blocking offensive line, and I do think that's considering considering the running backs you're bringing back this year and the type of attack you hope to have and being more physical up front, I do think that's a really good sign. And you return 4 or 5 guys, 5 starters. I think that's a big deal. So just kind of monitoring that left tackle battle is huge, but I do think this offensive line was, for the most part, a pretty good offensive line, and they improved significantly pass blocking from 2021. It definitely got a little. I think it got a little shaky at the end of the year when injuries started to happen, and Marcus Tate went out, and Jordan McFadden was playing hurt, and you saw kind of the drop off there. But I do think that this offensive line has the potential to be a really, really strong offensive line. And it seems to be, in the projections, a lot of people in the know and a lot of analysts seem to think that Clemson's offensive line could be one of the best in the ACC. Florida State is returning a really good one, but I think Clemson is right there with them as far as kind of the starting five and kind of the productivity that we can expect to get out of them.
Yeah, I mean, and you could see it. There was a significant drop off last year when Marcus Tate went down.
Yeah.
We talked about it on a couple of our post game live shows. Just following up on the games, and it was a significant drop off. And you talk about the other injuries. Other dudes were nicked up. Jordan McFadden was definitely not 100% at the end of the season, but he was sticking in there and doing his best to finish strong for us. And much respect to him for that. But yeah, I think you got a good point. And what a lot of people aren't talking about, Clemson goes out and gets Garrett Riley, right? And this new offense, and it's always called an air raid offense, right? But if you look back at Garrett Riley's time as an offensive coordinator, specifically last year at TCU, he ran the ball like 54% of the time, right? And we got two special backs, and if we can get that left tackle especially settled, I think we can have a special year running the football. When you got a guy like Phil Maffa, you got a guy like Will Shipley in the backfield, and then you got guys behind them that can give you quality snaps as well. We saw dudes ball out in the spring game, right? So, to your point, I think our running game could be really special this year. I think that's a good thing because that will help Cade get settled as the brand new starter in a brand new offense, and that will allow the wide receivers to kind of come along, get their footing. If you can really lean on the run, especially in some of those early games, it can allow you to really develop that offense and get some chemistry going as you go into the end of September and playing, FSU. So I think the offensive line is going to be super important, and specifically the running game, especially early in the year.
Absolutely. Yeah, just comes down to that left tackle. I'm a huge Tristan Lay fan. I loved it. I loved it when we took him.
Yeah,
obviously former 5-star, one of the highest rated. I believe he might be the highest rated offensive line commit in I think ever, at least since Dabo has been here.
He is.
I think he might be the number one.
He is.
So a lot of talent, had to kind of grow and develop a little bit. He got to sit behind a really, really strong starter and Jordan McFadden and kind of learn the ropes and not really have to step in and be needed right away. So it really just comes down to whether he can win that job out. I've heard, obviously Colin Sadler is going to be battling for it as well. Yep. Another guy I'm really, really high on. But I do think Clemson has two really good options to put at that left tackle position. So I think that's always a positive. You could also possibly see Marcus Tate. He's taken snaps at left tackle at different times.
Yeah. I really like him at guard, though. But
I do like him at guard. I do think the running game is especially better with him at guard. But
if you had to push him out there, that's one thing. But I mean, there is something to be said. For him to come in and not have to play right away, right? You get to sit behind a guy like Jordan McFadden, Colin Sadler, and him, Lay. Just getting to sit behind him and learn the ropes, and you get that year of development, you get that year in the weight room, you get to really, get your feet wet, because as we know, offensive line is one of them positions that is truly as developmental a position as there is on the football field, and people tend to translate a lot slower. Jumping from high school to college and then college to even pro along the offensive line. So I think one of those dudes will separate in the fall. If I had to guess, it would be Lee. But again, we need one of those dudes to separate and really take that position. We don't need a situation where it's kind of back and forth, no one really separates. I really
Right.
hope one of those dudes separates, and then the other guy is just there, as depth, and things like that. So
Absolutely.
uh, so oh yeah, okay. So our OL recruiting has been great the past couple cycles compared to earlier years in the Dabo era. It's time for them to show out. Yeah.
100%. I do. I definitely think this is the best shape the Clemson offensive line room has been in a few years. As far as the talent you have in the room, the bodies, um, you're not really thin necessarily anywhere. You have options.
No.
Um, just a lot of guys. There's definitely some guys in that depth chart that haven't played a ton of snaps. So you always got to wonder. But um, there's not a single guy really in that room that wasn't a pretty highly rated recruit. And you're going to have. Are you going to? I think you're going to have, I mean, especially if. Well, it really doesn't matter who starts at left tackle, whether it's like Tristan Lay or Colin Sadler. You're
Yeah.
gonna, all five guys on the offensive line are going to be former 4 or 5 star recruits. Um,
Yeah.
that hasn't always been the case at Clemson, and
Definitely not.
don't get me wrong, stars don't always equate to great players. 2018 Clemson's offensive line wasn't overly talented, but they played really well together and they fit the scheme, and that's really what's most important. But this is definitely the best physically and talent wise. I think the Clemson offensive line has been in a good while. So there definitely should be a lot of reason for optimism.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of moving to the skill positions. Do you see any of these? I know we saw some of the early enrollees from last recruiting class come in, and they got a spring under them, and we saw a few of them in the spring game, and some of them were up and down, and some showed flashes of potential greatness, right, and things to come as they continue to develop. But specifically for the summer enrollee guys, are you particularly keeping your eye on any of those guys in the skill position along the offensive side of the ball?
Absolutely. Obviously, you got 2 really interesting prospects coming in at the wide receiver position, in Tyler Brown and Ronan Hannafin. Really keeping an eye on Tyler Brown. I think he's wearing number 6. He took, EJ had the number before. Now he's going to be wearing it. I'm a huge Tyler Brown fan. I think he has a lot of potential to possibly be an early impact guy. Maybe not a heavy, use him heavy, but I definitely think he has the speed. I think he was a really, really advanced receiver. Maybe not to the degree that Antonio Williams was coming in, but I think he's a guy that has a really high floor, and I think he's a guy that could possibly produce right away. So I'm keeping an eye on him for sure. And then Ronan Hannafin, obviously, really big body, really physically impressive. He played linebacker in high school. So
that's something you don't. That's something you don't see very many wide receivers do.
Yeah, and I definitely think he has a chance to be one of the best blockers on the team. If you go back and watch his high school tape, that he was a really, really good blocker. And if you can block, and especially playing in Garrett Riley's system where you're going to be asked to block a lot, I think there's a pathway for him to get on the field some. So I'm kind of viewing those 2 with some intrigue, because I think they have some really nice attributes that could possibly lend them to playing early.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about blocking, that's something that really intrigues me, because that used to be something that the Clemson wide receiver room used to take pride in, right? They used to have bets against each other, and competitions for who was the best blocking in space and who finished their blocks out in space as far as the wide receivers go. And it seems to be that kind of got that culture kind of went away the past 2 seasons. Guys didn't seem to really take the blocking as serious as some of the past wide receiver rooms did. So that's encouraging to to know that we got a guy and Ronan Hannafin coming in that's a willing blocker, that's a guy that takes pride and stuff like that. What do you think about a guy like Tink Kelly?
Yeah, T. Kelly is interesting. Kind of a late addition to the class. Kind of played both ways at Daniel. I, I'm really interested to kind of see how that plays out because the plan is to give him a shot at receiver, kind of see how that goes, and if it's not meant to be, then move him to DB. But so I'm definitely keeping an eye on him as well. But he was a really productive player at high school, at Daniel. And guy just he made a lot of plays, and that's the kind of guy that the kind of guys that Clemson has kind of gone after. Especially in their safety room, they've been kind of they've been not focusing so much on physical tools and upside, but more like proven production. And I think Tink Kelly certainly fits that description. So I'm interested to kind of see how that. Kind of how this fall kind of goes for him and where he ends up. It's possible he's a redshirt candidate.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Do you see a couple of new dudes trying kind of taking a red shirt, specifically Tink Kelly? I think he's probably one of the ones that probably will end up getting redshirted.
Yeah, because I think you have really good numbers right now at wide receiver and DB now, especially with the incoming class. So I mean, but hey, he could shock some people and possibly work his way into possibly not using his red shirt. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean that'll all be worked out on the field, right? Looking back to the spring game, while we're still talking about the wide receiver core and this new class of guys, did anybody really stand out for you that you think could make some noise in fall camp? That you kind of saw in spring practice and how they performed?
Well, obviously the talk and the one early enrollee wide receiver was about Noble Johnson.
Noble Johnson, yeah.
He definitely had some opportunities to make plays in the spring game. He made some of them, didn't make some others. But I think you kind of saw some of the raw ability that he has. I think he's still kind of acclimating himself into the offense, but I think he's going to be a good one. I've talked to some Texas people that are really in tune with Texas high school recruiting, and they thought it was a really underrated signing for Clemson as far as the wide receiver position goes, and they think he's going to be a really good player. And I tend to agree. I mean, I like him a lot. And I definitely think it would be better. It would definitely help Clemson's wide receiver room a lot if he's a guy that they can go to at times.
You think he's got a? You think there's a possibility he redshirts just because of kind of the up and down spring that he did have, or
maybe? I think there's a. It's possible. I think there's a chance. There's a lot of fluidity right now in the wide receiver room. I don't think anybody's spot is necessarily secured. I mean, other than Antonio Williams and I think Bo Collins is definitely when healthy. I think you have to have him on the field. But beyond that, you don't really have a whole lot of proven guys. So I think it's all about who kind of separates themselves in the spring and kind of where obviously you hope Adam Randall and some of those guys are kind of that. But things can happen. But if you I think if you do redshirt him, I think that's a really good sign for where Clemson's wide receiver room is, and you definitely feel confident about the guys you have in the room already. So if we come out of this saying, wow, Noble Johnson didn't even really have to play, and I think that means you had a pretty solid year at receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about the wide receivers that were on the roster last year, Antonio Williams, obviously everybody would say he's got his position pretty much locked up, right? He's definitely going to be that slot guy. He's going to be, that quick twitch guy for the wide receiver, that breakout speed. But a guy like Bo Collins, I really think he could have, a pretty significant year this year. He did, he was hampered by injury quite a bit last year, but outside of Antonio Williams, he was our best receiver last year. our most consistent. He did, deal with some drops, but again, he did have, the shoulder injury, and he had a lot of different knick-knack injuries going on. And then you think about a guy like Adam Randall that got a ton of love last offseason, right? The coaches were absolutely raving about him, and then he tears his ACL and he goes through that whole thing. What do you think about him coming into fall camp?
Yeah,
Both Bo Collins and Adam Randall.
Well, Bo Collins, I do think you have a degree of, you kind of know what you're getting out of him. And I think it's really just about staying healthy. I think Bo Collins is going to be a really good fit for this Garrett Riley offense. And I do think he's going to be a really valuable weapon for Cade this season. I think the question with Adam Randall is, one, right now he looks absolutely perfect. At least, if you've seen some of his, social media posts, and he seems to be in really good spirits and in really good shape. Guys built like DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, those Ole Miss receivers that they had, a while back.
Yeah.
He's really, really impressive. So it's really just about, kind of staying healthy, because he dealt with that nagging injury, and he had some during the spring, and so I think it's really just about staying healthy for him, and really getting a chance to go out there 100%. I think you saw some of the raw ability last year towards the end of the year, and you saw him get open at times and have chances to make plays that I think he will when he's 100%. And if he is 100% and he is that guy, that definitely, I think that's the single most profound change in Clemson's, the dynamic of Clemson's wide receiver room. And I think the outlook definitely changes a lot. Your ceiling is definitely a lot higher with Adam Randall playing at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, because you got a guy in Adam Randall, if he's performing as well as advertised coming into last season, before he got injured, a guy that can really go up and high point the ball, make contested catches, a guy that can definitely block on the in space. So really hope he has a good fall. And honestly, I mean, this wide receiver room's kind of all over the place right now. You got a Cole Turner who had flashes at the end of last season, right? He redshirted, but you saw flashes from him at the end of last season. So wide receiver is really kind of – I like where we're at wide receiver. I think we have a lot of good options. I think a lot of dudes could step up and really, have breakout seasons at the wide receiver position. But I honestly don't know what it's going to look like until we get deeper into fall camp and kind of see how it all shakes out. There's a lot of potential in there, and I think we're in a good place, and I think we're going to be really good at the wide receiver position this season. But who kind of, comes out on top, that's going to be exciting to watch as we go through fall camp.
Absolutely. John Sarin gets in and says, when Cade was throwing to Bo this past season, he looked very different. I bet he'll break out this year. Yeah, definitely one of my breakout candidates. I think Bo Collins really over the past 2 years, I mean, if you look at the 2-year sample size, he's been your most consistent wide receiver. Mm-hmm. And you've seen the flashes of what he can be. And, and I want to see what he looks like with more steady quarterback play. And hopefully that's what you get out of Cade this season.
You saw some frustration from him too when DJ was playing quarterback about ball placement and stuff like that. You could see him coming off the field several times, a little frustrated about kind of where the balls were placed during his routes. So, yeah, I think there's something to be said. He did look much more comfortable catching balls from Cade. Isaac says Randall might be too big now.
I don't know about it. He's not. I don't think he's put on any extra weight. I think he's just a little bit more toned, and I think he's just a little bit more in shape
Yeah.
I think that's really just the biggest thing. I don't think he's put on any weight. He's not bigger than he was coming in necessarily. And he has a really rare combination of size and speed. So I mean, kid can run. I don't think I don't think he's of the similar mold of the big bodied wide receivers that Clemson has had in recent years. You know, the Ajos, the Joseph Ngadas. I definitely think he has a higher athletic profile than those guys. Steel Gamble gets excited for all these guys. They're going to eat under this Riley system. Yeah, I mean, you saw the instant impact that just scheme can have. At a program like TCU. I don't think the cupboard is bare at Clemson. That's for sure. I don't. And I think the talent level on this team is better than maybe it has looked in the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, I think Clemson's fourth in the country if you just look at roster talent. So Garrett Riley has a ton to work with, certainly more than he had to work with at TCU. And he did a fine job there with the guys that they had. So I don't expect it to be any different for our Tigers this season.
John gets it. Excuse me. You could feel the heat in the stares from Bowen and Gatto when DJ mistimed or threw out of their radius. Crap load of frustration. And I mean, it was kind of it wasn't a well kept secret, during the year, but there was definitely internal frustration from a lot of the offense, not just the receivers, but running backs as well, and the offensive line. They're just it didn't. Obviously, we know how clunky and just not fun it looked to play in that offense, and I can only imagine how the players felt.
Yeah, it was hard to watch at times. That's for sure.
Yeah,
it was hard to watch.
It was like watching a baby giraffe, like a newborn like baby giraffe that just never really, it's kind of scrambling along and it's just getting kind of clumsily walking, but it's never really gaining its footing, and so it's just kind of stumbling all over the place. And it's like, but instead of like kind of stabilizing itself and starting to figure it out with more reps, it never got better. That's kind of what it reminds me.
It was so funny.
Reminded me of.
Yeah, it was so funny, and at times like watching DJ run out of the pocket, downfield, was just sometimes comical, and somehow, he would gain significant yardage.
Yeah, I mean, he had some really nice moments. And
it never looked pretty. Like it was never smooth.
That little dead leg juke he did, that for some reason, that slow ass dead leg juke. I don't know how he did it.
How did that get so many defenders too? Like he juked, like I can't count
the Miami game that he had one run in against Miami that was absolutely filthy. I was in awe.
And it was I guess it's like the old video games, like from like way back when, like in it, like back when the graphics were super terrible. That's like DJ trying to juke people, but for whatever reason it worked. I don't know how, but this man was juking linebackers out of their shoes with his slow-mo dead leg juke. Maybe that's what it was. It was just slow-mo. Yeah. And they didn't know what to do. They were just like, I don't know. Okay, he's past me. But it was funny to watch, man.
Yeah.
Not at the time, but I can laugh about it now.
Yeah.
Our offense has been
definitely, you got to learn to laugh at the scars, I guess.
Yeah, man. You just gotta roll with it.
Yeah. Definitely some traumatizing moments for sure, though.
Oh, for sure, man. For sure. But yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, well, I just kind of wanted to transition a little bit and kind of, since we're talking about guys that are in better shape and definitely improving. Let's do it. There's one guy in particular on defense that was on the Locked On Clemson podcast this past week, kind of talking about what he's gone through the past season and kind of the changes he's made this year and health-wise. And that's one. Andrew Makuba.
Absolutely, man. A guy in Andrew Makuba that probably had about as good as a freshman season as you could possibly have, right? Just coming in and absolutely dominating, kind of taking the defense by storm. He was as advertised, played incredibly well. And then you go into his sophomore season, and last year was really up and down. Part of it, if you ask people, it was, Makuba playing out of position, not his natural safety position, being more in the cornerback role, and he just wasn't necessarily comfortable with it. Mike Reed, talking about how he was asked to do a whole lot more, and maybe it was just a little too much at the time. He was also dealing with, knick-knack injuries like everybody else. He had an ankle injury and a knee injury and, just a little banged up. But, yeah, this past week he was on the Locked On Clemson podcast and, talked about kind of his headspace right now and talking about, kind of how he feels going into the 2023 season. And I'm telling you, if you guys go listen to it, it's pretty encouraging. Physically, he talked about how he's put on 12 pounds and he's just, physically in the best shape that he's ever been in, taking his nutrition a lot more seriously. Obviously, he goes to the early morning AM workouts and, the coaches talk about how much more dedicated he is in the weight room and, how much he's progressed doing those early workouts and stuff like that. And he just seems locked in, man. He talked about how, he just had a baby. He's got a son now with his girlfriend. So he talked about kind of how that just puts him in a different mindset. It makes him hungrier, makes him want to work harder, makes him want to perform better. And it was encouraging to just hear him talk about how excited he was for this upcoming season.
Absolutely. And it's great to hear because I mean, we all saw what the struggles looked like, and the issues he dealt with, health wise, and obviously just having to play out of position. I mean, Andrew he's always been he's at his best when he's been able to kind of play closer to the line of scrimmage, kind of make plays on the ball, be in run support, tackle, making tackles. That's really where he was at his best. Just not a guy that's, you really want to ask to be in man coverage against, another team's best receiver. And he definitely had to do that at times last year, and it did not go well most of the time. So I'm glad that Clemson, from a roster standpoint, is in a much better shape, health-wise, in that room where they can play him more as a box safety and they possibly move him around a little bit. I mean, he's still a very versatile guy. I mean, you can definitely play him at nickel at times and kind of move him around in different spots, but you definitely don't want him just having to play coverage for the majority of the game.
No.
So I think he seems to be in good spirits. He seems to be really excited about the prospects of this season, and that's really big because freshman Andrew Makuba was a treat to watch, and definitely want to see him look more like that version of himself than what we saw last year.
Yeah, if he could bring back that freshman magic, it's going to be something special this season. With his new body, taking his nutrition more seriously. I think he's due for a huge bounce back season. He talked about some of his personal goals heading into the 2023 season. He wants to be all ACC. He talked about the Jim Thorpe Award and just some different, high, lofty goals that he has for himself. And I think if a guy, like Andrew Makuba can really stay locked in, I think he could be special this season. We saw it his freshman year, so if he can bring that magic back this year, it's going to bode well for the Clemson secondary. He's going to be really good in run support, especially with that added size. And I hope to see him just flying around the field like he was his freshman year, just playing free, being comfortable, making plays. Seemed like he was guessing a lot last year, not really sure of what he was supposed to do some of the times. So hopefully they have that ironed out a little bit better. Hopefully he stays mainly at safety, maybe flex him to nickel here and there based off of what the offense has given us and stuff like that. But really look to him to just focus on safety and and just being the best version of himself that he can be. You know, he talked about Dabo and kind of how he's had his run-ins with Dabo, right? When he's not going to class or not taking stuff pretty serious. He's like, Dabo's the guy that you see in interviews, but he's a guy that holds all of his players accountable as well. So he coaches you hard, and he also loves on his players and treats them really well as well. So it was good to hear his outlook on the Clemson defense. He seems to be excited about what Wes Goodwin's doing with the defense and the scheme and all the guys that we got coming back. So I think our defense is shaping up to be really, really good this year. We'll figure out how good it's going to be.
WB2DX says, Jordan, you look tired out. No, I'm not tired. I'm just the StreamYard layout is doing a number on my eyes.
Yeah.
And that's just that my vision is really sensitive. So that if I look tired, that's not. I am tired, but it's not. But I'm not tired. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, you know.
It's been a long day, but I'm not. But my eyes don't look like that because I'm tired. My eyes are just tired of looking at a bright white screen.
Yeah,
but I don't want to lower my brightness too much because then I can't read the comments.
There you go.
So that's kind of the catch-22 I'm in right now.
Steel Gamble says, "Don't forget about my guy Mickens."
No, I have not forgotten about RJ Mickens. I'm probably fan number one in the RJ Mickens fan club. I've been preaching the RJ Mickens gospel for the last 2 years. He's been the most consistent player in the secondary for me. He was really good in 2021. Even better in 2022, despite some of the issues in the secondary. He's a guy that he does his job, and I think that's kind of the kind of he's not this high end, high level NFL talent. I mean, I think he's definitely got an NFL future, but he's not like a first round type guy. But he's just a really smart player, really instinctive, always seems to be in the right spot. He's made he led the team in interceptions last year. He's one of the better tacklers on the team. He's just a really, really good safety. And that's kind of the mold that Clemson has been going after in the last couple of cycles. Just guys that are high level. They're going to play at a high level, maybe not the most toolsy guy. They're not the just freakish athletic guys that maybe some of the higher rated safeties in these recruiting classes are, but guys that really smart players that do their job and offer a lot from a leadership standpoint as well. So I think RJ is in for a really good, really big year. I think he could earn himself a good amount of money with another strong year. So, yeah, consider me an RJ Mickens fan. I love RJ Mickens a lot.
RJ Mickens is going to have a really good year as well. He's going to be just fine. Isaac Smith says XT looks to be in great shape too.
Bro, XT looks scary, man.
Yo, that dude, man, I am like one of the biggest Xavier Thomas fans out there, man. And that dude looks like he's been putting in nothing but work this summer. He looks out of control in shape. I mean, he looks scary. He looks huge. He looks like, he's in, great endurance shape, man. He looks like he's just ready to dominate. And I truly, truly, truly hope that he doesn't have any setbacks on the injury side of things. I just want him to have one full, final, healthy season at Clemson and really show and really turn into the prospect that we all knew he could be when we recruited him to Clemson. And, you flash back to his freshman season. That was pretty special. He played sparingly because we had, quite the defensive line. But when he played, he made his presence felt. And I look for him to get back to that. And, yeah, he's in amazing shape. So I can't wait. I look to him to be the leader of that edge group this year. He's going to have to step up and really be the vocal leader and be that guy in the room. Although he doesn't have a ton of snaps at Clemson because of, you know, his battles with COVID and that sickness took him out for a while. And then, you know, the surgeries and all the injuries and stuff like that. He's really going to have to be that veteran presence on along that edge and kind of bring all those young guys along. You know, I know we got Justin Maskell, but I definitely look for XT to be kind of the leader of that room this season.
Absolutely. Really excited about this defensive line. And speaking of which, Pat Bateman gets in and asks, what do you think the starting defensive line will look like? Yeah, that's a really good question, because it kind of just depends on where you think Clemson is going to go as far as what the plan is.
Yep.
I definitely think that probably the default would be just kind of going XT, Tyler Davis, Ruka Roro, and Justin Maskell.
Yeah.
And I definitely think you'll see that lineup a lot. But I've definitely talked and talked with a lot of football people and just kind of gotten their opinions. But I've seen some. Considering the depth at defensive end, there's a possibility with the way Clemson is trying to get bigger at edge that maybe you kick one of your defensive tackles out. I think Ruka Roro would be a good candidate to play, like play at the 5 tech if you wanted to, maybe you slide Peter Woods in the starting lineup or possibly a Peyton Page or Trey Williams along with Tyler Davis, and then have XT at the other defensive end spot. So I think there's a lot of combinations that you could go, and it really just depends on how much these true freshmen work their way into the rotation, which seems to be likely. There's going to be at least a couple of them that play a good bit, especially obviously Peter Woods being most notable.
He's a guy you could see flexing to edge as well.
Absolutely,
at times.
So there's a lot of different ways that this defensive line could go about it. I think that's going to be kind of ironed out in the fall when you have your full, hopefully you're healthier offensively, so you kind of get a better idea of what defensive combinations work and what lineups and what personnel groupings really work the best for you. But I think the great thing about this defense this year is you have a lot of options, and that's always a good thing for a defensive coordinator. You feel like, hey, I have some quality options no matter what configuration or personnel groupings I decide to use. I think there's an opportunity to get a high level play out of multiple. But we'll just see. I guess I'll just cop out because I didn't really answer the question about what I think is going to happen. I'll just cop out and go with the default of XT, Tyler Davis, Rook, and then Justin Maskell, at least to start the year. But I definitely think that's going to be fluid and subject to change for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and depth is definitely gonna depth along the edge is the question heading into fall, right? Who are those young guys that are going to step up and kind of solidify themselves as cracking the rotation of the edge, right? Or are you going to have to see some of those defensive tackles, since we have so much depth there, flex out and help along the edge? So that's really the question. But if you had to nail me down, I'm going with the same cop out: Justin Maskell, Ruka Roro, and then Tyler Davis and XT. That's obviously, I think that's the easy answer. But more to come. In fall camp on the defensive end rotation and what that's going to look like. Because I mean, those dudes ain't out there every play, so somebody's got to step up to take snaps along the edge. So XT and Justin Maskell can't be out there every play.
Right, and that's where guys like Zaire Patterson and Cade Denhoff come in, and as well as the true freshmen. So
I saw an interview a couple weeks ago about Cade Denhoff did an interview, and it was just these dudes are hungry. They're working. They're ready to get their shot as well. So I think we're going to be okay. I think we're going to be fine.
Yep, I think you have options. Just a matter of who steps up for sure.
Yep. we got talent there. Not proven talent yet, but there's talent there. They're just gonna have to step up and make it happen. Just like we just got finished talking about the wide receiver room, kind of the same thing.
That Syracuse sack is still good. Yeah, that XT. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
If that's the one play I think about every time I think about XT, like that's the play that plays on repeat in your mind when you think about XT's freshman season.
Oh yeah,
that was just a brutal sack.
Isaac gets in and says, y'all think Capehart will transfer or eventually break out? He was highly touted coming out of high school and hasn't done much. Really, I don't think that's too much of the fault of DeMonte Capehart.
Yeah.
I definitely know that he definitely had some struggles earlier in his career, and as far as just being dedicated to playing the position and doing the little things right. But the staff is still really, really high on him, and I think his patience is going to. I think it's going to pay off. I think you'll see more of DeMonte Capehart this year. I have not sold my stock on him yet. I mean, he's still a third-year guy. Again, like you said, really highly touted, top 50 player in his class that has a boatload of talent. And he's been behind some really good defensive tackles. Clemson has just been blessed to have, really talented guys in front of him. I'm excited to kind of see where he is on the depth chart, because I think there's some room there. But you have a lot of good options between Trey Williams, Peyton Page, Capehart as well. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how those guys, and then you have true freshmen like Vic Burley and Stephylan Green, and obviously we know Peter Woods can play along the line as well. So there's a lot of room for movement, and kind of it'll be interesting to see how that rotation kind of looks. But I think there's a spot for Capehart, and I think the staff wants to reward him for sticking it out, because there's a lot of guys of his talent level and caliber that would have transferred out by now, just because he hasn't played so much. And I do think he showed some flashes last year when he did kind of get in a lot more towards the end of the year, and you saw him a little bit more. And I thought he showed some flashes. And DeMonte Capehart is a guy I'm definitely keeping a really close eye on. I do think there's still opportunity for him to break out, and if he does, man, that just means you're extremely loaded.
Yeah, man.
At defensive tackle.
That tackle position is something serious. That room is insane.
Oh yeah,
that room is insane. And the fact that you got Rook and Tyler Davis coming back, they came back this year. That just amplifies that room even more. There's a ton of depth. You could just roll defensive tackle after defensive tackle in the game, and you're going to have quality snaps out there.
Absolutely. All right.
All right, man.
I feel like that's going to do it.
I think so. I think so. Did our good recruiting update. Talked about the possible commitments coming in July. Broke down some stuff heading into fall camp, some things that we're looking to see. So it's been a pretty good show, guys. We appreciate you guys coming out. We got 24 people in the chat right now. If you have not hit that like button, you better go ahead and hit it before you get out of here. Don't leave without hitting. No, I'm just kidding. You can leave if you want to without hitting the like button. But we would appreciate if you would. Pat Bateman said, yeah, D-line fatigue will not be a problem. Absolutely not. It will not be a problem at all. But I think that's going to do it for us tonight, guys. We appreciate you guys coming out. Jordan Bowman's back, okay? So you guys don't have to mutiny on me, okay? He'll be back next week as well, all right? He'll be here. You won't just be stuck with me. But we appreciate you guys coming out, man. It's always a joy to come on here and see so many people in the live chat, getting their comments in and just talking to me and Jordan about Clemson football. We truly do enjoy it. I appreciate every single one of you. You guys are an important part of the show. But we'll see you next week. Jordan Bowman, you want to send them off?
Yeah, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. You guys are just really awesome for sticking around and listen to us talk and ramble on for 2 hours. So I really appreciate it. It always blows my mind every week that people actually want to hear us and hear our opinions on Clemson and kind of interact with us. So really, really am thankful for being able to do this and hopefully continuing to do this in the future. Thank you guys once again, and we will see you next Thursday.
Next Thursday, guys, 7 p.m. Don't be late. We'll be here. Till next time, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. We'll see you later.
Later, y'all.